Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da.
Welcome, 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 geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to a brand new edition of Geeks Me Radio. Tonight we're talking all things Peacemaker. We'll have actor Alison Araya on talking about her role in the HBO Max series. Later on, we'll have writer Paul Kupperberg and artist Rick Burchett talking about the characters of Peacemaker and Vigilante. All that and more. Stand by.
We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors for Hogwarts houses, one ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
And if you're driving around the greater St. Louis area tonight, hearing us on the big 550 KTRS celebrating 25 years in broadcasting, hello to you. If you're out there streaming us in the world on the KTRS website, thanks very much for tuning in. Of course, if you're watching this on Instagram, if you're watching this on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, we thank you for watching, and hopefully you've hit that subscribe button so you never miss a notification whenever we do a live show every Sunday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Talking about Peacemaker, my guest right now, Alison Araya, talking about her role. What a fun series this must have been for you to work on. You've had a lot of great series, but this has to be just a notch above, I would think.
Absolutely. It's been amazing. I'm so excited to be a part of this world, and how well it's been received has just been mind-blowing.
And you've done a lot of great projects. I was kind of interested when I dove into it. You've been involved with the DC Universe since 2006 with Superman Returns and Smallville, tangentially with iZombie. So you've always had this kind of foot in that superhero world. It must be nice to always kind of be in that fandom.
Absolutely. I think, it's ironic how much superhero, how many roles I've had in the superhero world. And, but I think Peacemaker really is just a whole new experience.
So obviously the obvious question you've probably gotten it a few times now, since you've been in all these things, were you a comic book fan growing up? Did you read comic books, or is it just something you kind of got into through acting?
It's something that I got into through acting, but I think I have such an appreciation for the comic book format. I think it's such concise storytelling, and some of the projects that I've been involved in have allowed me to dive into that world. Like when I worked on The Watchmen, that was an incredible graphic novel. But it's always allowed me to extend my creativity and my imagination, and Peacemaker did just that too.
And you've had a lot of original characters, too, so it's not like you've had to go back and research some of these comic book stories for, like, I'm sure John Cena was like, hey, read these trade paperbacks to get involved with the character. You've kind of, that's kind of nice to be in that world, but kind of have your own character and kind of make a character your own, really.
Absolutely. It's a real privilege, to be able to create and have, like, a blueprint of a character and then be able to step in and add to it creatively, which, a character like Amber on the page can go so many different ways, and just the freedom that I had and the collaboration with James to be able to create something as wild and as a bigger firecracker as ever was delightful.
And I love the interplay. We first obviously meet you in the first episode, and you're part of a married couple who you don't really seem to get along. John Cena kind of breaks into your apartment. I love the interplay between you and Lenny Jacobson, who plays your husband. Did you do like some test reading with different people? Kind of talk a little bit about you getting cast and Lenny getting cast for these roles.
You know what? That was James's genius. Lenny and I had never worked together, and we didn't have a chemistry read. So we met for the first time when we got to set.
Wow.
So it was, oh, hello. Hi. We're going to go and be this, uber dysfunctional married couple. So it was great. Like I read the energy that Lenny was bringing. He read the energy that I was bringing into it, and then it became its own thing. And I think, one of the biggest gifts that James gives his actors is the space to improv a little bit. And it's not necessarily I believe, to get any new dialogue in there, but more to allow us to find the nuances of the character and find some timing and chemistry. And that's exactly what happened. Lenny and I started to do a little improv, and then we really found our groove. And then, I remember there was a moment that John just kind of stepped back and was like, "You guys just do your thing."
And I'm a huge fan of improv. I think that brings a lot. I think every person, whether they're going to be an actor or not, should study improv because it just makes you, I think, a smarter person, a better person. But doing improv, did any of the improv stuff make it into the cut? Because obviously everything's very scripted, but just out of curiosity, were there any things that James was like, "Oh yeah, let's keep that"?
The improv stuff is definitely the post-credit scenes.
Okay.
So the interrogation scene, that was all improv. I mean, we were there to identify Augie's character, but then the little play out of that scene was improv. So yeah, I got a little kick out of seeing that in there in the post credits.
That's always, and James Gunn, I mean, every person I've talked to who's worked with him has had nothing but great things to say about him because, he's a very talented director. He's very knowledgeable about music, and usually the music in his projects is almost a character of its own. I think if I remember correctly, I saw another interview you did, and you said you weren't really into Cinderella and that kind of music, but obviously you probably found an appreciation for it now.
Oh, absolutely. I always, I knew the hair metal and the glam rock was always in my world. Growing up, I can't say that I was a diehard fan, but preparing for the role, I was definitely listening to Cinderella, and on my way to set, I definitely had it on the headphones listening.
When you're doing a project like this for HBO Max, was there anything, because you've done a lot of great projects, so you've got a project currently on Netflix that just dropped too, actually. Is there... With all the streaming platforms now, I feel like there's more chances than ever for actors to tell stories, and we're getting all these original concepts like that. I would think, as an actor, this must be almost a renaissance with all the streaming platforms. There's all these projects to choose from. People can make their own projects and everything. Talk a little bit about being an actor in this particular environment.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a really exciting time for actors or any creatives, anyone working in film and TV, and for storytellers in general. I think, the demand for content and the accessibility of the content and the global audience that it's reaching because of the streaming makes it really exciting. I've lived in many corners of the world, and so to have a show like Peacemaker be able to reach all of my people all over the world is amazing, and that wasn't always the case. So I think it's really exciting. And in terms of the amount of projects coming through, I think it's a really great time for writers. I think it's a great time for representation. And so knowing that there are stories that are being told through different lenses is really exciting. And, to have a part and to be an actor in this moment, I know for myself, the scripts that I'm reading, the material that I'm receiving, and the opportunities to tell the stories are incredible. So I think it really is a great moment, and I think the quality of television has improved so much. Like it really feels like a golden age. And when you see actors who were traditionally film actors coming into the television world, I think it's because there's a refinement. There's been a refinement in the storytelling and in the format of the 8 to 10 episodes. And the stories there is so much great television out there right now, and so many great actors and writers and directors. So yeah, I really think it's a golden age, and I'm personally really excited about the projects coming out and the new voices for sure.
I would certainly think the TV almost kind of has to up its game because there's so much, like you said, there's so much great stuff out, and the people can get it in all these different places. It's got to bump itself up as far as the writing and everything like that to compete. Because now you've got a wider net you're casting, and there's so much great content that you really have to do something to stand out from the pack.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're creating stories. Audiences are so intelligent, and they're getting more and more so because of the exposure to great story. And you also have to be able to challenge audiences because they are so smart. They're not going to fall for a formula that might have worked, 10, 15, 20 years ago. audiences are demanding more sophisticated stories and more complex characters. And so I think it elevates the writing, it elevates the production overall, it elevates the actor's challenge to be able to step into these more complex, more nuanced characters and to really bring a story to life, for sure.
And if you just now tuned in, again, you're listening to Alison Araya talk about her role in HBO's Peacemaker, now available on that streaming platform. With this character, I imagine, like I said, this just must have been such a blast to do. Obviously, it's work, but when you're enjoying it this much, it must not have felt like work, I would think.
Not at all. Like, honestly, it was almost a year ago that we started filming, and I remember having those pinch myself moments on set because, there I am. There's, I mean, also I was a huge fan of Danielle Brooks coming into this project. So knowing I was going to get a chance to work with her, I was super excited. And I usually don't fangirl until I wrap and I'm done. And then I'll quietly approach the actor and say, hey, I'm a really big fan. I love doing this. And, but I couldn't help myself that day when I got to work with Danielle. I'm like, I'm a really big fan. I'm so excited to be here with you. So yeah, I kind of lost my cool and did have a little fangirl moment there. But I think I kept it cool around John and James. I think.
Good. It's hard to do sometimes because you're meeting some of these people and, like I'll do the same thing. I'll go to these conventions to, get interviews with certain people. And it's hard not to okay, I'm trying to be a professional. Let's not, be too gushy. But as an actor, you're working on all these different people and some of the projects you've worked on too, between like Man in the High Castle, Travelers, which was one of my very favorite series, that show. You've worked on Arrow. You've been around so many great people. As an actor, can you think of a particular project that you've kind of taught you something that you hadn't, in all your training and everything like that? Is there one particular project or a particular actor you've worked with who's kind of taught you something that's kind of stuck with you?
I mean, I learned something from every actor that I work with. I'm a real observer. So I'm always watching and absorbing as much information as I can because I really try to approach my career by always growing and challenging myself. And I want to do better. Like I'll look at my work objectively and see where I could improve, been more specific. I think, it's a natural thing for any actor or artist to do. But I've gotten some great advice over the years and just learned so much from different actors. I had a really great conversation with Shirley MacLaine when I was working on A Christmas Movie Noel a couple of years ago. And just little tidbits of, what it is to be an actor and what it is to be a human being and how to create longevity. And not just, the actors, but also directors I've worked with have imparted so much wisdom. I had one dear friend, really tell me, or one of the lessons that really stuck was him telling me, it's not about the destination. It really is about the journey. And the more I do this, the more I realize that it's 100% true. I think there's this hunger to get to the next thing. Yeah. And the next thing begets the desire to get the next thing. And really, when you sum it up, just enjoy the journey like I am right now. Like Peacemaker has been like the wildest journey. I had no idea that Amber would be such a hit. So I'm really just riding the journey and saying yes to it all and having a really great time with it.
I'm always interested in the casting process, how you got the part of Amber. If you tell you what, do you mind sticking with me through a commercial break?
Of course.
Okay, we're going to talk to Alison right about that after we take this quick commercial break. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS.
Hi, this is Venus Sunwell talking about Lost in Space Season 3, which is now streaming, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
We are back. This segment brought to you by our official movie sponsor, Marcus Theaters. Marcus Theaters, if you go to the website, marcustheaters.com, you can find the location of the Marcus Theaters or the movie tavern located closest to you. It's a great time to go see movies. There's so much great content out there right now. If you haven't yet had a chance to see Spider-Man No Way Home, that's still playing. I saw that they had the James Bond movie is still playing in certain Marcus Theaters. But if it's cold out, go inside, hang out, have some hot popcorn, get in those heated, big reclining loungers and watch a movie in the best possible settings. And if you are traveling, if you can download the Marcus Theaters app. I've got it right there on my phone. That way, if you're out and about, you click on that, it'll tell you the Marcus Theaters location closest to you. You can actually buy your tickets and your concessions right through the app. So the concessions are hot and ready and waiting for you when you get there for a more contactless experience. It's one of those things I missed so much when the pandemic happened. The last movie I saw in theaters was Bloodshot, and then I saw Tenet as soon as the movie theaters opened back up again. And that was a very dark period when the movie theaters weren't there. So I'm glad they're back, and get out and support them, because when they were gone, we all missed them. So get back out, show them how much you love the fact that they are open again. If you're going to see a movie, do it in the best possible surroundings. MarcusTheaters.com, again, is the website for the best movie-going experience in the galaxy. We're chatting for the next couple of minutes here with Alison Araya about her role in HBO's Peacemaker. And before we took that last break, Alison, I'd asked you about the casting process, because I'm always fascinated about some of the stories the actors give us about getting cast. So if you would talk a little bit about you're getting this role.
So, I mean, the audition came through, during the pandemic. So that meant self-taping at home. So it was a real sort of ghetto setup. I was still trying to figure out what my setup was. So I called in a friend. He was on Zoom, and we just recorded it. And, I got the sides, and I had an idea of what I wanted to do with it. And yeah, my costume choice was like a slip that actually belonged to my grandma who had passed. So I always try to bring a little piece of my grandma to my auditions.
That's nice.
My little, way of honoring her and her bringing me some luck. And I wore this kimono over top of it. And apparently James really liked the look of that. And so he sent the audition to the wardrobe department. So when I was cast, the costume of Amber was kind of built around the audition wardrobe that I had. But in terms of the audition, I auditioned for the role, I submitted, and then I was actually working on another show when we found out that I had booked the role. And then, I didn't know that Lenny had been cast until they had the announcement. And then I looked Lenny up and was really excited to work with him. And then the rest was, magic.
And it's amazing, too, that you've never, because I thought maybe they would have done some kind of chemistry reading, because the you and Lenny, just the way you were bouncing off each other, it's almost like you were a married couple. It was brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those alchemical moments of casting. Like, I'd love to ask James, like, what was it? How do you imagine a pairing like that? Because it really could have been imagined any kind of way. But there was something about bringing us together and the way that we were able to work together. And I think, someone as seasoned and experienced as Lenny is, we were both in that yes. And, and then we just went to town.
And it's such a great series. I know they've just released, I believe, the fifth episode just dropped. So that's the fourth episode. So the fifth will drop on Thursday. So so if you haven't had a chance, and it's so hard for me. What are your feelings as far as releasing the entire series at once, or kind of piecemealing it out like we used to have to do when I was little, and I'd wait till the next week? Do you have a preference as far as just binge watching all at once, or do you like to kind of the drip?
Yeah, sorry, there's sirens going on. I personally love the week to week. It creates some suspense, and I personally think that dropping those first 3 episodes and getting audiences interested and hungry for the next was a really good move. So then you can watch week to week and then go back and binge the entire thing once it all is released, which is the way I like to watch it, because I know I've missed something. I think sometimes also when you start binging something, you get a show, you get so hungry for it that you miss details and you just want the next episode. But then when you slow down the process, you can really get into the story, meet the characters. So yeah, I my preference, I like the week to week drop.
And we just heard, coming back from commercial break, Mina Sunwal, who you got to work on Lost in Space, another great series too.
Yes.
When you think of all the stuff, like we mentioned Travelers, which I dearly love that series. If you're listening right now and you've not yet seen Travelers, definitely go check that out on Amazon Prime, because that was absolutely brilliant. But Lost in Space, we mentioned Arrow and all these things. Is there anything you get recognized from the most? I'm sure probably now it's going to be Peacemaker, but is there anything that, like a certain project that people are like, oh, I saw you in Arrow, I saw you on iZombie?
Yeah, I definitely, Peacemaker is definitely the one that most people are going to associate with me. But previous to that, Julie and the Phantoms definitely was a huge show for me, and Riverdale, Arrow. So yeah, those with the bigger fandoms, definitely.
Right.
Oh, and Fear the Walking Dead too.
Oh yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
When you think about all these different projects, have you had one that's been, be it with just the camaraderie of the other actors, the writing, the script, however it was, did you have one that you feel like was the most rewarding, either professionally for you as an actor or just on a personal level?
Oh gosh, that's so hard to answer because honestly, they're all so amazing. Like I had so much fun working on Maid. You know, that was another like ratchety character that I played, which, you know, it just sort of coincided that that was the role that I was preparing before I got onto Peacemaker. So, I mean, so much, so many of them. Like I have such fond memories of every set that I've been on. But I gotta say, I was so excited to work on Peacemaker for so many reasons. And for me, like it was so much fun. The atmosphere was so incredible. And yeah, it was just a really special project. There was so much enthusiasm and yeah. And I guess like everyone was just really hyped up for the show, which was really exciting. So I cherish that experience.
And I've heard all good things, like, you know, the internet can be a horrible place. People say whatever they want through anonymity and just kind of spew stuff out. But I've literally not seen any negative things said about Peacemaker. It's being very well received universally, that I've seen anyway. So that's got to be, again, very nice to know, as bad as the internet can sometimes be, that you're getting all these accolades for the show.
Yeah, I mean, it really has been so overwhelming and humbling to be on the receiving end of so much, you know, love and appreciation. I think the show itself is just magic, and twisted in all the right ways, and it's classic James Gunn. And I think John Cena is just perfect. Freddie Stroma, like everyone is just like, it's a brilliant cast. It is a brilliant cast, and yeah. I think really at the helm of it all is James Gunn's enthusiasm, his direction, his vision, and eye for detail. I mean, it's always going into a new show when you don't have a reference point for a season. It can be a little overwhelming in that, you know, we're not really sure what we're stepping into, but I think because the script was so strong, and I remember the table read, hearing it out loud and thinking, oh, I get this. This is going to be so fun. And then the music as well, you know, as you mentioned earlier, the music is almost like another character and has been in you know, for a lot of his projects. So I think because of all of those reasons, yeah, audiences are excited and really meeting the project with the enthusiasm they've met it. And that's why there's so much love on the internet for it. Because yeah, as twisted as it is, it's pure.
That's right. Very well said. Absolutely. And we actually had the composer, Kevin Kiner, was on the show with us 2 weeks ago, I guess. And he was talking about the music, and he says James Gunn is probably the most musically knowledgeable director he's ever worked with. And that's one of the things, when I'm going through, I saw the opening, the dance sequence, and I don't think I've skipped that yet. Each episode, I'm like, nope, we're going to watch this whole thing because it's just so much fun. And that's kind of sets the tone for the episode, that there's that joie de vivre that's underlying this bloody, kind of brutal-esque series. It's really well done.
That dance sequence is like a stroke of genius. I will never get over the fact that there was scheduling conflicts and I wasn't available for that one. So, and I owe a lifetime of apologies to Lenny for not being available for that.
Maybe season 2, if
oh, fingers crossed.
We can only hope, yeah. And I know you've got I want to mention too, your website. It's AlisonAraya.com. We'll put a link to that in the show notes for this, so that people can kind of keep up with you. Social media, are you very active on social media, or is it kind of just for work? How does social media treat you?
You know, over the last couple of days, the week since the show was released, like the social media has really blown up. So I'm stepping into this space of engaging more with the fans, and yeah, again, just really humbled and so appreciative of all the fans and all their love for Amber, and you know, the compliments that they've been extending. It's really sweet, and so I want to be able to participate and engage more with the fans, because you know, without them, you know, it's their fandom and their appreciation that keeps me, you know, working. So I'm really happy and excited to step into this new chapter and get to know the fans a little more.
And we mentioned that Peacemaker is currently on HBO Max. If you're listening to this, want to go check it out. And also, I believe it's Brazen is on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken, currently.
Yes, that's right.
And what else can we look for you in? Are you working on something currently, or are you just kind of waiting for the next one? You've got a lot going on right now. Or are you kind of taking a little bit of a breather?
Yeah, it was a little bit of breather over the holidays. We have some things lined up that I can't talk about just yet,
Okay.
but 2022 is going to be a really important year, and I'm really excited at the opportunities that are coming down the pipeline. So yeah.
Very cool. This has been an absolute treat to be able to have you on and talk about this show, which has been so much fun. Tell people where they can find you on the social media if people want to keep up with you.
Of course, yeah. You can find me on Instagram at La Alison Araya, Twitter La Alison Araya, and yeah, drop a comment. Love to respond, and thank you so much for having me on. This has been great.
Thank you for your time and continued success to you. Hopefully, we'll have you on again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be well. There she
You
goes,
too.
Alison Araya, and you can, of course, the website, AlisonAraya.com, has links to her social media. Make sure you're checking out Peacemaker. It's a great series. And we're not done with the Peacemaker talk yet. We've got Paul Kupperberg. I can see him waiting. We're going to have artist Rick Burchett on as well. We're going to take another quick commercial break, and we'll be right back chatting more Peacemaker. Please stand by.
Hi, this is Meatloaf, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
We are back. Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. I'm your host, James Enstall. And want to make sure we tell you about our official comic book sponsor, which, of course, Bugs Comics and Games. If you go to the website, bugscomicsandgames.com, you can check out all the cool things there are to buy from him. If you're in the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area, make sure you go visit them. They're right there in O'Fallon off of Bryan Road, and they've got a huge stock of back issues. They've got current comics. If you don't see it, ask either Larry or Tim, and they can probably get it for you. They're always buying collections, too. If you have a collection you're looking to get rid of, maybe, it's just time to unload some stuff. You got too much stuff. I've been there. Take it into Bugs, tell them, and let Larry and Tim take a look at it. They'll give you a good price for it as well. And, of course, make sure you join the Avengers Discount Club. That way you get a discount on your weekly comic books that if you're buying stuff, you want to save some money on new comics, back issues, toys and games, merchandise, or supplies, you join the Avengers Discount Club and you start working towards getting that discount. If you want to check them out online, again, the website bugscomicsandgames.com, and of course, give their Facebook page a like as well. We'd love to see them get up there on their likes on Facebook. Again, bugscomicsandgames.com. Very proud to have them as our official comic book sponsor here on Geek to Me Radio. We've had my next guest on the show before when it was online. I've never had Paul live, though. We've got Paul Kupperberg, writer extraordinaire, and we're also joined on the phone by a frequent guest. Rick Burchett is on the line as well. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, James.
Of course. So I know you guys worked together on Vigilante. Was obviously we're seeing him in the Peacemaker series, and I think if I'm not mistaken, Paul, you wrote that from issue 19 all the way through the very end with issue 50, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I actually my first time on writing Vigilante was a fill-in issue in number 16, and then I came back on number 19 to do some dialogue. And by 21, somehow I was writing the book. So,
Rick, you were the inker. You came in on, was it at least 5 issues of Vigilante?
Yeah, I think I did 6 issues of Vigilante, at least 6 issues of Vigilante, yeah.
And Vigilante, of course, I know him from the Justice League Unlimited series. It was the old Vigilante, the cowboy type, voiced by Nathan Fillion. And this is the Adrian Chase Vigilante, who we've seen pop up in Arrow on the CW. We've seen him pop up a couple times, but this is the costume and everything is, Paul, this is your Vigilante. This is the right out of the comic books. That's got to be exciting to see him on the big screen.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it is. I mean, Vigilante was Mark Wolfman's creation, of course. It's like I do have a connection to the character. Yeah, it was. It's always startling to see these guys come to life on the screen. Although, character-wise, I don't think they're playing Vigilante exactly the way we did in the comic book.
And Rick, as an artist, when you're looking at when you're working on these characters and everything like that, do you have a bit more of a do you get a little more nitpicky when you see something on the screen or on the TV that's not quite how are you able to just turn that part of your brain off and enjoy the show or the movie, Rick?
It's for me. Everything we get today, all the movies, all the TV shows, and Paul probably feels the same way. It's like it's all gravy because when we were growing up, we had the George Reeves Superman series, maybe some Filmation cartoons. If you were lucky, you occasionally got to see a Fleischer Superman cartoon, and that was it. I mean, we're getting everything thrown at us now. Our childhood is showing up on the screen.
Yeah, it's actually gotten a little overwhelming. It's like, it's almost too much of a good thing at this point. It's hard to absorb it all. You look at things on coming up on television, popping up on TV, and you go, "All right, that was a comic book series, folks." Even if it's not somebody in a costume and a cape.
And it's interesting, too, because I know people keep talking about, you hear chatter of like superhero fatigue. We're going to end up getting to a point where I don't see it slowing down. We keep getting series and movies and everything. I don't see that we are in a superhero fatigue phase. Paul, do you agree?
I don't think we are yet. But, Westerns were, one of the most popular genres for close to 30 years before they had their by the 1960s, they were all but gone. So it could happen. But as long as the money keeps rolling in, they're going to keep making them. And that's fine because hopefully they'll keep going and going and going. They'll finally get around to characters that I created. So I can get it.
Yeah, it's the thing. I think we keep forgetting.
Lord of Atlantis series,
Yeah, right. The thing that I think we keep forgetting, it being fans, people who work in the business, whatever, is that the vast majority of the public, this is all brand new to them. They knew Superman, they knew Batman, they knew Wonder Woman, they knew Spider-Man, and beyond that, this is all like coming out of the blue. So, I think it's going to take a while for this to run out of steam.
Yeah, and I know, like I've talked to both of you at previous times saying that Vigilante, that 50-issue run of Vigilante is one thing. When I sold my collection, I kept that just because it's such a fun story to go back and read. I know there was, if I'm not mistaken, there was a little bit of controversy at the time, and maybe I read something after the fact, that when you had Adrian Chase commit suicide, it was a bit of was controversial. Did you remember it that way, Paul, or was it not really much of a fuss?
I was just surprised at how little fuss there was. We did take great pains in the text pages at the end of the book to talk about suicide and not just kind of throw it out there without any discussion. But I think people who were reading the book on a regular basis were kind of, when that happened, their reaction was like, "Yeah, where else were you going to go with this?" I mean, we were building to it for over a year. So, it was a surprise, but I don't think it was a shock.
Did you know the book was ending and that's kind of like, okay, they want to stop it at issue 50 and that's why you were kind of steering it in that direction? Or was it just the natural evolution of the writing process and we're going to end it with issue 50 because he's gone?
Well, it was a little bit of both. I mean, numbers were starting to go a little, slip a little. And we were figuring, especially in that atmosphere, in the late 80s, early 90s, there were a lot of, quick comings and goings on titles. And, 50 issues is a respectable run. So I think it was kind of like, let's pull the plug. Because I sincerely didn't want to keep doing the book. I mean, we had taken Adrian Chase to the point of no return. We had already had two other people put on the costume and die. We've made the point, So it was time to end it. It was time to end the book and the character.
And I believe you had Blackthorn was one of the characters introduced in the Vigilante series. Yeah. And that was one that if I'm not mistaken, again, it was supposed to, that was supposed to be a spinoff too. Was going to get a Blackthorn comic book, but it just never materialized.
Well, I put in a pitch for a Blackthorn series, but it didn't get picked up. So, that was a shame. I thought she was an interesting character with a lot of past to delve into. So it would have been fun, but yeah.
And we were talking with, we just had actor Alison Araya on talking about her role in the HBO series Peacemaker. And of course, I love to ask people, did you know about the comic books before this? Was it something you kind of got into or whatnot? As an artist, Rick, when you're working on something, you don't probably, I would think, have to do as much research as a writer coming in to write the character, because you can go back and say, okay, this is what the character looks like. Do you, or does that vary by artist, Rick? Is it something you do some research on beforehand to, other than the look, or you kind of get into the history and everything? Does that inform your art choices?
Well, whenever I go onto a book that's already been ongoing, I do research the background of the character. For instance, I did a Huntress miniseries with Greg Rucka, and as I went to look at back issues and things to see what her costume looked like, I realized that no two artists drew her costumes alike.
Huh.
I mean, there was every variation on the costume out there, and so I kind of had to sit down and take one from column A and kind of put all these things together and make it recognizable as the character. But there wasn't one, except for Joe Staton's, there wasn't one version of the character out there to work from. So, but other times you'll go in and everybody will, stick pretty closely to what, for instance, Plastic Man. Plastic Man always looks like Plastic Man. It's there's not a lot of costume change there, but really, and another thing is, if you go on to a book that you haven't been on and another artist has been on, you don't want to throw a lot of real different stuff at the readers first jump out of the chute.
Right.
They don't like that. So I try to keep it a smooth transition.
And we've got some chats coming up. I figured out this week, for those of you listening, I figured out how to get the chats to where I can see them. So, Chance, thank you for listening, of course. And no, it wasn't. My wife did not make me sell my collection, so no worries there. Wedge Horn said that Huntress miniseries that you did, Rick, was really good. They enjoyed that quite a bit. And Bob Singleton says he's very glad that Paul and Rick are both on the air together. It's great to have you guys both on. When you're writing a book, Paul, and then you've got a new artist or new inker come on, does it change the gig for you any from a writing standpoint?
Vigilante had a kind of revolving cast of creators on it during my 30 issues or so. Started with Dennis Cowan and went through Steve Irwin and Todd Smith and Rick, and then, ended up with Steve Irwin, who then he and I together went on to do Checkmate. But back in those days, you kind of operated on the assumption you're never really quite sure who's going to draw the story. In a lot of cases. Yes, there were regular teams and regular books, and those were locked in. But you could turn it in, writing it for artist A, and it turns out that artist Z is drawing it, and it's a disaster. But I kind of learned over the years, I started in 1975 writing for DC, where I never knew ever, practically. I think there was a regular, Ken Landgraf and I were the regular team on Nightwing and Flamebird in the Superman family. But, other than that, I didn't know who the hell would draw the thing. So you just kind of learned to give to give as much information as any artist would need and hope for the best. Sometimes it was, not the best, and other times it would be like Gray Morrow or Jack Kirby, and it's like, okay, not going to complain here,
And you've also, in addition to Vigilante, who is on the HBO show Peacemaker, you've also worked on the Peacemaker miniseries that came out in '88 as well. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you shared something on your website. James Gunn, even, you were listed in the credits as one of the creators he thanked for your input on the character and informing stuff that he did. So that's nice that James Gunn is always really good about recognizing the creators who worked on these projects.
He's been, it's kind of a desperate plea for attention. I tweeted James Gunn and said, "Hey, I'm the guy who wrote the comic book that it looks like a lot of your inspiration came from." And he tweeted back, very generously saying that, it absolutely was that Vigilante and Checkmate and my Peacemaker miniseries was, I think he said he was reading them while he was writing the scripts. So, he's been very generous about acknowledging the debt he owes to creators like, myself and John Ostrander.
And Rick, obviously you worked on the Vigilante book. Have you ever done Peacemaker for DC at all?
No, I know. Well, I did. He guest starred in the Vigilante book during my run, and I worked on him then, but not as a standalone character in his own story, huh?
And
that was Todd Smith on.
Yeah, Todd Smith. That's right. Yeah. And with these characters that we're seeing all these things now on the screen, again, if you're listening to the Big 550 KTRS, we're talking with writer Paul Kupperberg and, of course, artist Rick Burchett about their work on these series. With the character Vigilante, obviously, we mentioned at the very beginning, there's the old Western one with the blue jacket, the white pants, and then there's the more modern one that you wrote, Paul, and that you draw, Rick. Was there ever any thought during the series to having Wild West Vigilante brought in to the current series? Was there any ever talk of a crossover?
No. In fact, I tried very hard to avoid superhero tropes and the DC universe in Vigilante. It was a very set in reality book. Anytime you got a guy in a costume running around with a gun, you're taking it out of reality, because in real life, nobody has ever done that. There has never been a costume guy who ran around in the night, fighting crime. Right. Never happened. You know why? It's a stupid idea. You'll get killed. But anyway, anytime you have a guy in a costume running around, it takes away some of the reality. But I wanted to, I was dealing with rape and child stuff, just like drugs and all kinds of horrible stuff. And, it's kind of like, it seemed to like I would be diminishing the seriousness of these things by, having some guy fly in and solve the problem.
And it was a very grounded in reality book. Like you mentioned, it was almost, when I went back and read it, I was kind of thinking that Vigilante is kind of like DC's Punisher in a way. Just the way that he does go after the porn rings and the drug dealers and things like that. Very similar characterizations, different, but obviously just kind of...
They both wear costumes, they're crazy, and they kill people. But other than that, Punisher was just like out of control. Like, I think of the on a crazy scale, Punisher would be like here, and Vigilante would be about here. Both crazy. Not taken away from either of them, but you don't put on a costume and shoot people unless you're nuts.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And we had that, we just, on HBO's Peacemaker, John Cena gets into a very, shall we say, spirited debate with his dad's neighbor about Batman, which was quite a bit fun to see. And I know Batman showed up in Vigilante. And Rick, was that the first time, Rick, that you got to draw Batman?
Trying to think. Yeah, probably. It was
88-ish.
Yeah. I see. The thing is they were shifting me around so much back then that I'm really not sure where I was at a given point in time. I know that
you
I
the
started
guy down the corridor holding the door.
Yeah, exactly. It was like I remember doing Vigilante clearly, and I remember that I had to change my inking tools to work on it, and I remember, the characters that were in it. But boy, I'll tell you, if Batman was in it when I worked on it, I really don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that was because it was Marv Wolfman's baby. He created him in the pages of New Teen Titans Annual #2, if I'm not mistaken. And then obviously we had Nightwing crossover, Peacemaker. Obviously, that's a great cover where Peacemaker's inside the plane shooting at Vigilante who's falling out of the plane. But it's so cool to see both of these guys now showing up here and almost like best buds. It wasn't. It's kind of unexpected, but it's very fun to see this. Again, if you're just now tuning in, we're talking with writer Paul Kupperberg and artist Rick Burchett. We're going to take a real quick commercial break. We're going to come right back and continue our chat talking about Peacemaker and Vigilante. If you have a question for either one of these gentlemen, you can shoot us a text on the KTRS text lines 84126. And, of course, the phone lines are open if you'd like to call in, 314-931-5877. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
We're back on Geek to Me Radio. Want to make sure we tell you about our premier sponsor, the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. You might know them from the website discoverstcharles.com. Great place to visit if you're in the Greater St. Louis, St. Charles area. Maybe you haven't been over there for a while. They've got a lot of great restaurants, a lot of cool shops, and a lot of things to see and do. It's always a great time in St. Charles. If you're from out of town, maybe you are listening right now and you're streaming this from the East Coast, you're one of Paul's neighbors over there on the East Coast maybe, or you're listening to this out there on the West Coast, and you're thinking about planning a trip. Maybe this is the year 2022, you're tired of being stuck at home, you're vaccinated, you're ready to get out there and mingle again, you want to go see someplace new. City of St. Charles has a lot of great things to see and do. There's always something cool going on. You can plan your trip. We always recommend starting with the website discoverstcharles.com. You can find places to stay, whether or not you want to camp, if you want an RV park, if you want a hotel with first-class amenities. It's all right there. You can plan your trip, come see all the things there are to see and do, and great food. If you're in the Greater St. Louis area and you've not yet gone over there for a meal, they've got the Salt and Smoke Barbecue right there, Tompkins House for specialty cocktails, and of course, go to the sweet shop there for a gooey butter milkshake, which is absolutely amazing, but I can only do about one a week because otherwise I start looking like the Michelin Man. But it's always a good time. Again, check out the website, discoverstcharles.com. As we always say here, it's an historically good time. We're talking with Paul Kupperberg and Rick Burchett. As always, the hour has flown by. We're coming up. We only got about 5 minutes left or so before we're out of here. We're talking about Vigilante and Peacemaker.
I'm planning my trip out there for the gooey shake. So
come on out. Yeah. See? That's a St. Louis thing, gooey butter cake. Have you had a gooey butter cake before?
I have not.
Rick can testify. Rick, you've had a gooey butter cake or two in your time, I'm sure.
Yeah, a few, yeah.
But yeah, if you ever get out this way for a convention, Paul, we'll make sure we set you up. I'll bring you a gooey butter cake next time you're out in the area.
Absolutely.
So talking about, again, Vigilante and Peacemaker, we've got this amazing writer and this very talented artist who've worked on the Vigilante book. I almost find Vigilante to be a more fascinating character than Peacemaker, but I will say James Gunn has done a great job of adding layers to him, because we saw him in The Suicide Squad, which came out last year, and it was just killing machine, very sarcastic killing machine, but we're seeing new layers to the character, and that's always kind of fun, I'm sure, as an artist, Rick, and as a writer, Paul, to be able to see something you've worked on kind of have those nuances brought to the screen.
Well, it's interesting. There's in the comic series I wrote, it was back in the 1980s. So his father, instead of being obviously an ex-super villain was a Nazi concentration camp commandant, and was, he was dead, but he was taunting him through a voice in the helmet, so talking to him and making his life miserable. The characters are different, it's not a dead Nazi, it's a live leftist righty. So but the dynamic is still the same. You know, the character dynamics between the father and Christopher are still the same, even though the whole situation is radically different. So, you know, it's interesting to see that brought to life in a, frankly, much more realistic way than a dead Nazi. So.
And Rick, has there been something that surprised you or stood out most about, be it Peacemaker or Vigilante, the way they're done or anything like that?
The thing that surprised me most is the fact that you can actually see them on the screen. It's the Peacemaker is like a fairly obscure character in comics, you know, the landscape of comics, and I'm sure a lot of people reading comics today, especially younger ones, had never heard of him. And to see something like that, I mean, the fact there's a Peacemaker action figure on the market pretty much blows my mind. It's, you know, one of those things you never thought you'd see.
Absolutely. And again, we're wrapping up here. Where the hour has flown by. Let me make sure I tell. So let me start with Paul. Where can people find you online and keep up with you? I know you've got your blog out and everything like that. Tell people where they can find you.
Well, I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and you can also find me at paulkupperberg.com, and usually just hanging around the corner, loitering and bothering people.
And Rick, you and I follow each other on Twitter, I know. You don't do Instagram or anything else like that, do you?
I do Facebook. I'm on Twitter, and I am on Instagram. I don't post very much because I'm not a very interesting guy. So I just hang around and look at everybody having a good time.
I would beg to differ, Rick. But gentlemen, it has been an absolute delight. Thank you both for taking time out of your Sunday to be on air and talk all things Peacemaker and Vigilante. Paul Kupperberg and Rick Burchett, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Take care. That's going to do it for us. Thanks, as always, to Joey V for making the show sound as good as it does. And make sure you check out Max on Movies. Coming up next, he's going to be chatting about his favorite female horror movies, female-led horror movies. We're going to talk with him about that next. So stay tuned for Max on Movies. Thank you to Alison Araya. Thank you to Paul Kupperberg. Thank you to Rick Burchett. Until next week, my friends.
It's not in the way you play Mario Kart. It's not in the way you look when you make Game of Thrones references. That's a show. This is Geek to Me Radio. That's a show. This is Geek to Me Radio.
Thank you, Belle Reve Penitentiary. Good night.
Hey kids, are your parents about to buy you a shiny new toy from Amazon?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Well, don't be selfish. Share some of that money with us. Before going on Amazon, make sure to type in bit.ly/geek2me in the web browser. It will look just like Amazon.com, except it'll say referral Geek to Me Radio up top. And then when you check out, a tiny percentage will go to support the show without costing you 1 cent more. So before your parents get you that gizmo, gadget, or widget, make sure they type in bit.ly/geek2me in the web browser.
bit.ly/geek2me, bit.ly/geek2me.